That has to be hard, though, if you're working for Joe Biden and you think he's going to be the candidate.
Right.
And you're an aide working on his staff or his campaign, and then all of a sudden things change and they push up Kamala Harris.
Right.
What happens to you?
Especially because they have tensions between the staffs.
Exactly.
Because she couldn't keep anybody. 87% of those staffers have resigned from day one. And then you have the Biden people who think, I don't even know how to work with her. And they don't work with her. And now all of a sudden they get elevated.
And they used to disparage her.
Right. And Jen O'Malley, for example, Jen O'Malley Dillon, the former Biden White House official, talked to her over the weekend, said, I need to know my role.
Right.
They're all nervous about David Plouffe coming in from the Obama years.
Well, they should be nervous because he's great at his job. Also, you got Stephanie Cutter as well. So David Plouffe apparently is in control of the math. How did they get to 270? Great at his job. Stephanie Cutter is now over messaging, all the communication strategy. The one thing I find troubling, though, okay, you got David Plouffe and Stephanie Cutter that had a great candidate. They had Barack Obama, someone that was on. This is a plan that was 5 years in the making to get him to the presidency. Now they have Kamala Harris, who they can't put on the road to actually talk with voters on a day-to-day basis. Sure, they can keep her on the prompter, but she's not going to have any of those breakout moments. Now, apparently the tension is because they said that David Plouffe is over the math, but he's really running the campaign.
Right.
And Jen O'Malley Dillon wants her role to be solidified as the campaign manager.
Because when you think about it, the Biden team, which a lot of it has morphed into the Harris team with the re-election in Wilmington, and why is it in Wilmington now? Because she's not from Wilmington. They're the people who thought that in the run-up to the election, they would put Joe Biden at union halls with 80 people.
Right.
Suddenly, they've got big events where there are in excess of 10,000 people, and it's completely different. And one of the other things, according to this Politico article, that talks a little bit about the tension between the Harris team and the campaign is the fact that apparently there are some people on the on one of the teams that has badmouthed the current vice president who's running for president, and they don't like that person.
Right.
And
I mean, you can see
they're a big part of the team.
Here's the headline of the Politico article. Kamala Harris, United Democrats. Her campaign still has fractures. It talks about how Biden's aides, as you're saying, Steve, in the past have known for their disparaging comments about Kamala Harris. It talks about the daunting task to try to integrate two different political worlds. Right. It talks about David Plouffe coming in, and Kevin McCarthy was interviewed, and he said, because David Plouffe worked for Obama, helped get him elected, he said, Obama's really running the show here. Listen.
Watching the campaign now, some of Obama's, David Plouffe and others are now working on the campaign. You're getting the Obamas shifting from running the White House to now running this campaign. This is the most liberal ticket in the history of American politics. We do not want to put San Francisco and Minnesota across this country.
And Nancy Pelosi may have taken Joe Biden out, but remember who was the Speaker of the House during President Barack Obama's presidency? It was Nancy Pelosi. They were very extremely close. Apparently, some of the reporting that we saw during the Sundays and show is that they did not, President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, as well as some of the leadership, did not anticipate Joe Biden selecting Kamala to be the candidate. They were expecting an open primary process, and after that second statement, he named them, put them all in the tough
So I think
position.
he's saying to Nancy Pelosi, there's two people with a lot of experience. Number one, I know you ousted me, but I'm going to pick who's next.
That's
I know you don't like
exactly
her
right.
because we saw you on television on CNN when asked, should she be the running mate for Joe Biden? He goes, he thinks so. Remember?
Yeah.
He thinks so. And how about this? Imagine if you're Julie Chavez Rodriguez and you're running Joe Biden's campaign, which got a big elevation, right? And all of a sudden you find out now you're in charge of the Sun Belt states.
Well,
really?
and
I thought I was
Hispanic
leading.
outreach.
I thought I was the one getting to 270. Now David Plouffe comes off the bench, leaves Kellyanne Conway's podcast, and now runs things. So I hope they work it out because she has a history of not being able to work out anything with her staff. Remember, a terrible campaign staff, a terrible vice presidential staff, who I'm not saying they're bad individually, but collectively there was no leadership, and they end up tearing each other's eyes out.
I think they're doing whatever it takes to win. We have 35 days until early voting. Is that right? 34
Something
days?
like that. Tick, tick, tick.
Well, I just hope the Republicans take the same strategy and do whatever it takes to win. All the petty going back and forth with old opponents, George and all, none of that matters.
Right.
It's about who's going to win. And Kamala Harris.
What does this tell you? This tells you that she needs all the help she can get. Donald Trump's running his own show, but they can't trust Kamala Harris to run her own show. They have to tell her what to do and bring in Obama's people.
Yeah, to your point, one of the things the Republicans need to do is they need a solid ground game. The Democrats for decades have had a great get out the vote on
it was
election
started
day.
by Pluff.
Right, exactly. Well, even before that, going back decades, they were really good. Machine politics. The Republicans right now don't have that. They're kind of farming it out to other people. But behind the scenes, also part of Politico playbook, it's interesting. Apparently Kamala Harris is getting ready to debate Donald Trump. You know who the debate partner is that they have selected? It is Hillary Clinton's former aide, that Philippe Reines is the guy who's going to actually be playing
like
Donald Trump. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and one of the things they will be doing is they will be trying to get her to pivot. And she's been pivoting on a lot of stuff.
Flip-flopping.
Flip-flopping, another polite way to put it in politics.
Changing her mind, totally.
Just like Biden did on day one. Remember all those executive orders shutting down the wall, shutting down the pipeline?
But he did tell us he was going to do that.
He told us he was going to be moderate, though.
Right.
He told us he was going to be moderate.
Last week we talked about how she was using the big airplane at big events, a la Donald Trump, and now she's taken something that is very near and dear to people who live on tips. Watch the comparison. Seem familiar?
Raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
When I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips. There will be no taxes on tips. No taxes on tips. It's called no tax on tips. No tax on tips. I'm also doing no tax on tips. No tax on tips.
So the question is, does she even know what the policy is when it comes to no tax on tips? Where did it come from?
The teleprompter.
Who does it all encompass in it? Also, if you remember, it's not just the tips policy. The Democrats, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, have already said they want to roll back the Trump tax cuts that are set to expire. What's your position on that? Are you going to be in support of a tax increase on most of Americans that got a tax cut under that bill? I mean, there's been no pushback or curiosity.
Why now? Why now?
Yeah.
She's been in office for 3.5 years as the vice president.
Or why not do it now? As the vice president, you have some influence. You can. Apparently, you have this weekly meeting with the president of the United States. Why haven't y'all proposed that being into law right now?
They didn't even think about it until they heard
That's
Donald
exactly
Trump
right.
say it first.
And that's going to be the interesting part is, she's doing a 180 on all the border stuff. Now she's doing, hey, no tax on tips. I wonder how long until she adopts another very popular suggestion that Donald Trump made a week or two ago, and that is no tax on Social Security, because that is a good way to get older people over 65 living on Social Security to vote for you.
Well, at one point, the voters have to say, now you're insulting me. Now, listen, if
People
you
want
want to
free
do,
stuff.
you are running on Donald Trump's plans.
Right.
So most of the stuff that Donald Trump's running on in terms of keeping the tax rate in place, in terms of having a strong border, in terms of having projecting strength on foreign policy, are 60% approval. Trump aside, these are issues that 6 out of every 10 Americans say I fully support. So instead of running on what she's done and what she wanted to do in 2020 as she got the nomination, she's running as Donald Trump. So the American people have to say at one point, this is a little insulting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't pretend as if we don't have a television, we're not online, we're not on social media, and understand where this came from.
The problem is we eat, breathe, and sleep this.
That's true.
We're covering this constantly, so we know that he said it first. But yesterday I was at a restaurant, and the waitress, we were talking about no tax on tips. How do you feel about it? She said, both candidates are saying that. She had no clue.
there you go.
Exactly.
I mean, she's one speech away from saying MAGA. I mean, she's almost.
No, she's going to say build the wall.
I mean, she's that close from doing it. But again, the campaign strategy is to isolate her. And judging by what's happened so far, there hasn't been any pushback. She has gotten a bump as a result from keeping her away from the American people. And if if you don't think it won't work, look back in 2020. They did the same thing with Joe Biden, and it worked.
Look at her voting record. If you really want to know what she thinks, how she feels, what she believes, look at her voting record. This truly is the most progressive ticket we've ever had in our country.
She won an award. I don't know if they gave out plaques, but she was in 2019 the most liberal senator, the most progressive senator in the Senate.
Track.
And Bernie Sanders was second.
Yeah.
Do they give is there a ceremony for that?
Well,
I'm not sure.
There's no plaque. I think she got a gift card.
Oh, she got a gift card to what, Starbucks?
Well, something like that. Well, but to your point about we haven't heard from her in a professional interview segment setting like that, it's because
that's Beltway stuff, Steve. That's just Beltway stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and her comms team said they're not going to do it because, you know what? It's not going to help them with swing staters and swing voters and stuff like that. But when you look at the new Siena New York Times poll, which came out over the weekend, suddenly it's within the margin of error, but she is slightly ahead in 3 of the states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which is a 180 from where Joe Biden was. There are some other studies out there, other polls out there that show Donald Trump is ahead. The point is, it's really close, and she has suddenly made it competitive. And is she going to put herself out there to be interviewed by people like Peter Doocy or anybody else?
Yeah, according to
like there's anybody else besides Peter Doocy?
Well,
come on, Steve, let's be honest.
At our house,
right?
Hillary Vaughn, Peter Doocy or Hillary Vaughn. I'd go for either one of them.
So real quickly, according to the RCP average, Donald Trump is winning in most of the battleground states, except for Nevada and Michigan. So we'll see what happens.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.